Welcome to Precision Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 57 of ASP.NET Gridview tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss about exporting gridview data to Microsoft Excel and Word. We'll be using this table TBL employee for this demo. Now, I want to retrieve this data from this table and then display that within the gridview control. And then underneath the gridview control, I want to have two buttons: export to Excel, export to Word. So when I click this button, export to Excel, then I want to export the data that is present in this grid view into an Excel worksheet. Similarly, when I click another button, export to Word, which we don't have at the moment, I want to export this data from the grid view control to a Microsoft Word document. Obviously, to achieve this, the first thing to do is to write the ADO.NET code to retrieve data from this table and then display that within the grid view control. So let's flip to Visual Studio. Let's drag and drop a grid view control onto this web form. Let's auto format this. Let's choose brown sugar scheme. Now let's drag and drop a button control, and let's set the text on the button control to export to Excel. So go to the properties of the button control and change the text to export to Excel. Now let's double click this button control to generate the event handler. Within the page load event, now we need to write ADO.NET code to retrieve data from this table and then display that within the grid view control. And we discussed about ADO.NET in a very great detail in ADO.NET video series, so please watch those videos first. To speed things up, I have this code already implemented, so let me copy and paste that here. So within the page load event, if not is post back, meaning if this is the initial GET request of the web form, then use the configuration manager class, read the connection string from web.config file and store that connection string in this variable. And using that connection string, we are building a SQL connection object. Look at the SQL command, select star from TBL employee. We are passing this SQL command as a parameter to the SQL data adapter object. We are going to execute this command using this connection object. And then look at this, we are creating a data set object, and then we are invoking the fill method of the data adapter object to fill the data into this data set after we execute this command. Then we are setting the data set as the data source for the grid view control, invoking data bind method. Okay, so if we run this application at the moment, the data will be retrieved from TBL employee table and then displayed in the grid view control. Now when we click this button, export to Excel, we want to export the data that is present within the grid view control into an Excel worksheet. Okay, so anytime we want to send something to the client, now here we want to send the grid view data to the client in an Excel sheet. So we need to do that using the response object. For example, let's say I want to write cookie information onto a client computer. Which object do I use? I use the response object. Okay, similarly here we want to send the the grid view data in an Excel format to the client, so I have to use the response object for that. So let's flip to Visual Studio. So within the button click event, I'm going to use the response object. The first thing that I need to do is call the clear or clear content method. The clear content method is going to clear any content from the response buffers. If there is any other content within the response buffer, that will be cleared when you invoke this method. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to append some information to the response header that's going from the server to the client. Okay, so to the HTTP response header, I want to add some information. So what is that information going to be? Now I want to tell to the response object the data that I'm going to send, that has to be opened up using Microsoft Excel, and I have to specify the name of the Excel file. Now to specify the name of the Excel file, now I'm using a response header called content disposition. So content hyphen disposition. So I'm using this HTTP response header to specify the name of the Excel file that I'm going to send to the client. And to do that, I have to say it's an attachment, semicolon, and then file name is equal to whatever name that you want to give to your Excel file. So here we are storing employees information, so I'm going to specify the name for my Excel file as employees.xls. Excel files have an extension of .xls, so I'm using that extension here. So that's response dot append header. So to the header of the response object, we are using this content disposition header, which is basically used to specify the file name for our Excel file. And the next thing to do is to specify the content type, the MIME type basically. So using content type property. So on the response object, specify your content type. Our content type is nothing but application / Excel. So it's an Excel data. Okay, so those are the three things that we need to do on the response object. After that, I'm going to create instances of two classes here. You may not understand why we are using those classes at the moment, but don't worry, that will be clear in just a bit. So I'm going to use a class called string writer. This class is present in system.io namespace. So let's go ahead and import that system.io. So it's string writer class. So let me create an instance of this class string writer. In a bit you'll understand how we are going to use this class. And then I'm going to create another class, HTML text writer class. Again, in a bit we'll understand how we will be using this class. So HTML text writer, I'm going to call the instance as HTML text writer is equal to new HTML text writer. And look at the constructor of this class. It's expecting an object of type text writer. But then look at what I'm going to pass to the constructor of this class. I'm going to pass the string writer object. But then, I don't get any compilation errors. Look at this, the constructor expects a text writer, but I'm passing string writer. That's because if you look at the string writer object, if I go to the definition, string writer class inherits from text writer class. So we can pass string writer to this HTML text writer class as an inherited type. In a bit we'll understand how we are going to use these two classes. Okay, so those are the two objects I need. And then the next thing we have to do here is, where is our data present? Our data is present in gridview control. And then what is the ID of this gridview control? It's gridview 1. So the ID of the control is gridview 1. So now what I'm going to do is gridview 1 dot, I'm going to invoke a method called render control. And look at the method. It's expecting an object of type HTML text writer. Do we have an object of that type? Yes, HTML text writer object I have here. So I'm going to pass this object to this method. Now what is this going to do? Look at this render control method. Look at the IntelliSense. It says outputs server control content to a provided system.web.ui.html text writer object. So the content of this gridview control will be written into this object. Okay, so what is the content that is going to be present in this gridview control? The employee data. Not only this employee data, the gridview control will also contain the HTML of the table cell, table row, etc. Okay, so this HTML text writer object will have both the content and the controls HTML. Okay, so that's why we have used this HTML text writer object. So the entire content and the HTML will be returned into that object. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to say response.write, and then I'm going to use the string writer object. So response.write string writer dot toString, and then finally I'm going to say response.end. Okay, so that's all the code that we need to export data to Excel. So look at this. This render control method is going to render the content and the HTML to this object HTML text writer. And look at this HTML text writer. It is actually taking in this string writer object as a parameter. So now whatever content and HTML that we have in this object is now converted into a string format and stored in this object. And then what I am doing with that object, I am converting that to string representation using the toString method, and then passing on that to the write method of the response object, which is going to write that to the client. And in the response header, we specified that the name of the file is employee.xls, so this data will be returned into the Excel file. And we are ending the response, which means everything will be flushed out. The response has ended. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and see if it works as expected. So when the web form loads, as you might expect, the data should be retrieved from TBL employee table and then displayed within the grid view control. Now let me click this button, see what's going to happen. Look at the error. We have an error stating control grid view 1 of type grid view must be placed inside a form tag with runat is equal to server. Now let's actually go back and see if our grid view control is present inside a form tag. Yes, it is. Look at this. The grid view control is here and it's present inside this form tag with runat is equal to server attribute. Then why am I getting this error? That's because of this render control method. So this render control method, causes the confusion. It makes a .NET think we are dynamically rendering a control outside of the form tag. Okay, so obviously to fix this error, all we need to do is we need to override a specific method called verify rendering in server form. So you don't have to remember that name by heart, but then look at this. The moment I say override and then I press space, then it's going to show me all the methods that I can override. So there is a method called verify rendering in server form, and then all I need to do is just override that method. I don't have to provide any implementation here. So this method confirms to .NET runtime environment that though we are rendering controls dynamically, they will be rendered as part of a server-side form. Okay, so that's it. Let me go ahead and run this now and see if it's going to work as expected. Okay, let's click on this report, export to Excel. Look at that. I have this employees.xls. Let's open that and we should have our employees data. But then we are going to get a warning message here. Look at this. The file you are trying to open, employees.xls, is in a different format than specified by the file extension. Verify that the file is not corrupted and is from a trusted source before opening the file. Do you want to open this file now? Now when I click on this warning, yes, look at that, I have the file opened. Okay, so why am I getting that error message? I mean, it's not an error message, it's a warning message. The warning message is a user notification function that was added to Microsoft Excel 2007. So the warning message can help prevent any unexpected problems that might occur because of possible incompatibility between the actual content of the file and the file name extension. Okay, and if you want to resolve this error, we need to edit the registry of our operating system. Now you can find those instructions here in this Microsoft article here. So if you want to get rid of that error, you need to edit the registry, and to do that you can make use of this article here. I'm not going to go into the details of editing registry right now, but then if you look at the output here within the grid view control, I mean we got the output, but then look at the formatting. It is actually applying that background color to the entire row of the header as well as the data rows. Now to you know I don't want the colors to be spread across the entire worksheet. I only want those background colors to be present just where we have the data. Okay, so to properly format this, obviously you can apply styles to your grid view control as well. Loop through the header row, apply whatever styles you want for the cells in the header row. Similarly, do the same thing for the data rows as well. And just to speed things up, I have this already implemented. So let me copy this and paste that within our code behind file here. So look at the code. What am I doing? I'm saying gridview1 dot header row. To that, on the header row we are using the style property and we are adding a style of background color. That's the style background color. I'm setting it to FFF, meaning I'm setting it to white color. All red, green and blue, all the three colors, I'm setting it to FF, FF and FF, which means it's a white color. And then I'm looping through each cell within the header row, and then for each table cell I'm setting a background color of A55129. That's nothing but I picked up that color number from the header row style here. Look at the header row style. That's what is the header row style. When we applied that auto formatting of brown sugar, the header row color number is that one. So that's what we are specifying here for the header row. And then look at this, for each data row, I'm looping through each data row, and each data row has got cells within them. So the first for each loop loops through each row, and then the inner for each loop is going to loop through each row, each row cells. And then for each cell within the data row, we are setting a background color of FF F7E7, which is nothing but the row style background color here. So I just picked it up from the auto formatted HTML that we have here, and that's it. So if I am going to run this now, and then when we export it to Excel, this time it should be properly formatted. The formatting should be applied only for the data part. So let's open that. So we get the warning again. I open that. Look at that. The colors are applied just to the grid view control. Alright, fine. Now we have seen how to export this data to Excel. Now let's say how to export it to Microsoft Word. To do that, all I need to do is let's drag and drop another button control here, and let's set the text on the button control to export to Word. And let's double click that to generate the event handler method. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this entire content, the code that we have in export to Excel click event handler, and paste that in this button to click event handler, which is going to export the data to Microsoft Word. Okay, now I'm going to make only two modifications. The first modification here is, instead of the file extension XLS, I'm going to change that to .doc, and then here the content type, instead of Excel, I'm going to say Word. That's it. Let's go ahead and run this now and see if it's going to export the data to Microsoft Word document. Alright, so let's click on this button, export to Word. Look at that, I have a Word document there. I click on the Word document, it opens up Word, and we should have this grid view data within Microsoft Word. Look at that, it works exactly as expected. Alright, so in this video we have seen how to export data to Excel as well as to Microsoft Word. Alright, on this slide you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.